7 o'clock. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our annual general meeting. Oh, apparently I'm standing in the wrong spot.
On the camera.
Hey. Okay. Well, I don't forget anything. No, it's my computer.
Sorry.
Technology is my downfall. Okay, that's fine. So my name is Jody Proctor, and I'm the Vice President of
Yes.
the Woodpark Community Association. And we're really happy to see you here tonight. Of course, it's a really good opportunity for the association to give you an update on all the activities that we've undertaken over the past year. It's a good opportunity to hear your thoughts on work going forward. And of course, it's a time for us all to reflect on the kind of community we want to live in. So super happy to see this turnout. I want to just do a bit of housekeeping. There's tea, hot chocolate, and cookies over at the cafeteria. Please help yourselves. If the hot water disappears, just kind of get my eye and do something, and I'll get some more. There's washrooms out in the girls and guys change rooms, just in the hallway. It's pretty obvious. And I think that's it for housekeeping. So I would like to officially call this meeting to order right now. And before we get to our guest speaker, just a reminder that we really expect a respectful dialogue in this room tonight. We may talk about things that people feel very powerful and emotional about, but we really need everyone to be respectful to our speakers, to our board members, and to other people in this room as we discuss any kind of issues. So I thank you in advance for that. So I will take this moment now to introduce our guest speaker. So I just want to make sure I say everything right about him. So he is our CBC correspondent on municipal affairs, Arthur White-Crummey. And today he's going to talk to us a little bit about the media's involvement in reporting on and being interested in development, for example, and other municipal issues, and maybe provide some ideas on how we can communicate about our issues in a way that will be interesting to media and to other people in Ottawa, including our leaders. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Arthur and pass the floor to him.
Oh, sure. I should be fine either ways.
Let's move it.
If it's easy, then sure.
I would like it when I have to speak.
That's perfect. It would be a little bit easier. So thanks for having me here today. Despite the fact that I'm regularly on TV, I do not often do public speaking, and I did grow up with a stutter, so do bear with me. So first of all, I hear that you're looking to be heard more widely, maybe about development files that you might be concerned about here in the community. And I'm just going to focus on a few elements of that question. Above all, how you can maybe get media attention for the files that you care about. So first of all, who am I? And go to my presentation.
I'm still trying to figure out where it is. This is a different version of Zoom than I'm used to. You usually should see the screen video file clips.
I'm actually a bit of a Luddite myself. I'm happy that you still do the meetings in person.
Oh, there it is.
It's gonna pump up at the butt. Oh, there's keynote. Yep. Ta-da.
And we're off.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. So who am I and what do I do? So I'm the City Hall reporter for CBC Ottawa, which means that I cover the day-to-day goings on at City Hall. That includes committees and council, also elections, and of course we're getting into one of those right now, so I'm pretty busy. Also, the city budget and financial reports, everything from LRT breakdowns to legal issues to scandals. Development is just one part of my job then. But I do regularly cover files when they come to planning committee or very occasionally when they come to the committee of adjustment. Go to the next slide. So I also regularly watch this website, which is called DevApps. You may be familiar with it. It allows me to catch new projects early, and you'll see a lot of active files there. There's 468 as of, I think I took that 2 days ago, including 12 here in Bayward, and I cannot possibly cover all of those. I ignore the overwhelming majority. So how do we make decisions about which ones actually make the cut and that we can write a story about? Go to the next slide. So here's 5 things I think about, and this is actually an older version of this slide that I forgot to change. We're going to change that timing. But for now, I'll just say that timing is important because, for example, right now we're in an election, and my time is like much more consumed with covering the campaign. So depending on when a file comes on my desk, it might be easier for me to cover it if we're in the middle of the summer and not in a, in a campaign. So going to the next slide, we'll just go through these one by one. I use the term superlatives for this. So think about words like the biggest, the tallest, the most expensive. If you can say that about a project, there's a good chance that we'll want to cover it. Maybe it's the first of something. First in the city is pretty good, but even the first in the West End, or maybe the first in your neighborhood, could in some cases make the cut for something that we would want to cover. CTV actually does this a lot more than us, and they covered the first Chick-fil-A to go into the city. They also covered the second. So sometimes there's a bit of flexibility on this first. We did not cover the first or the second. So there's slightly different news judgment depending on the effort. Really what we're looking for here is things that have a lot of impact on a lot of people. So they're remarkable in some way, they're big talkers, or they just have wide impact. So going to the next slide, here are some examples. You'll see a lot of tall towers. Often that does get covered, but also projects with a big price tag, like Lansdowne, which we covered every time the price tag changed. The oldest mall in the city, not so far from here, Westgate, shutting down. But even a smaller scale thing. I use the Belltown Dome, which Councillor Kavanagh knows well, which we found to be unique because it was the only, as far as I'm aware, geodesic dome in the city. So that can also merit coverage. Go to the next one. There's also the other side of the coin, something that is happening a lot. Is this project in your community maybe symbolic of a broader trend? The trend in itself has to be newsworthy, maybe something that is new or represents a policy change of some kind. As an example, we did do a story on something that came to the Committee of Adjustment, which we don't do so often, which was this particular rooming house, which was a very ordinary rooming house, but kind of fairly unremarkable. But we knew that the city was loosening rules around rooming houses, so this was a good opportunity to cover that broader trend. Just beside it, you see a high-rise project, not the tallest in the city, but it was something that had a very small number of parking spaces. And we saw that as indicative of the fact that the city was changing parking rules and accepting a lot more projects that didn't meet what would have previously been the parking minimums. And then this office conversion project, of course, seeing a lot more of that. This one was just one among many, but we chose it as an example of the trend. Going to the next slide. So landmarks. Will this project that maybe you want to get some coverage about, will it change something that people love or recognize? Will it maybe destroy a heritage building? Will it mar a well-used park or block a beloved view? But this doesn't work for everything. There's a bit of a threshold. Usually we'd be looking for a landmark that is recognized either by the entire city or at least a very sizable chunk of it. So go to the next slide. I mean, a great example of this is, of course, the addition to the Chateau Laurier. It's just an addition, but it got tons of coverage. Really, every time that this came to committee, it was getting coverage. We'll go to the next slide. But not all of them will have citywide provenance. There are some things that are much more local and confined to a neighborhood that we will cover. So we saw the Belltown Dome earlier. I would consider that a local landmark that we did cover. The Tiki Hut is another really good example. It's kind of hyper local, but if you've ever driven down Carling Avenue, you would have seen the Tiki Hut, and a lot of people do. So I decided to cover that. When I was in Regina for a while, we covered this project called Capitol Point incessantly, and it's really just a big hole in the ground. But it was at a very prominent intersection, and it became, in my view, kind of a local landmark. And you'll see that we covered when it was only 70% filled, not only when it was fully filled. So we'll go on to the next slide. Public service or public interest stories. So some people would say news is all about the clicks, TV is all about the eyeballs, which is of course true to a point, but and that tallest tower story will rack up a lot of views. But there are times where we'll be where we'll do a story, even if we're not sure that it will do well, if we see a public interest reason to do it, if something threatens health and safety, or if there's corruption afoot, or if it points to some broader problem that needs to be rectified. That's something that we'll definitely want to watch out for. Go to the next. So I chose to call this conflict. We could also call it drama. Maybe this doesn't affect a lot of people, like those superlative stories, but does it affect some people a lot? Do people feel very strongly about it? Will people be able to relate to them and see injustice or feel anger? Is there maybe a hero and a villain in the story, or at least compelling characters? So a lot of articles that I do, I would call them reports, right? Where I'm just saying the here, why, when, and how. But what I really like to write, and what I think our readers really want to read, are stories, not reports, where they have a narrative. So if you can frame that some way and explain how, you know, there's characters there's characters, then that might get our attention. That conflict can come out in debate, including at committee. But I thought this kind of the time to mention something that in committee, we really like it when people come in person, because that's when that drama comes out, when people are actually speaking at the committee meetings instead of maybe showing up virtually. Because keep in mind that we're a broadcaster and not just a website or a radio station, and seeing people in person allows us to do those interviews and get people on camera. So I'll go on to the next one, which is some examples of stories that had conflict or drama. We see from Lansdowne some very strong debate with recognizable figures, and conflict doesn't even have to be between people per se. Here we have the Chinese government facing off against the city, and some other examples there. So we'll go to the next slide. So those are some of the criteria that I was that I had in mind about how we make this news judgment about coverage. And if you think a project meets any of these criteria and you want to get coverage, then give me a call. I unfortunately don't have any cards with me. I have a batch on order, but David has my contact information. So, and then we can work together to try to draw attention to your concerns. I'd advise you to do that early, because first off, we like to be first on things, and something that hasn't been previously reported is inherently more newsworthy. But also because of some of the issues that I'm going to talk about next, by asking this question. First of all, how much does engagement matter? Planning committee can sometimes feel like a bit of a rubber stamp. I've been to meetings that only lasted about 4 minutes. But these projects usually come through what I'm sure you know of as zoning bylaw, zoning. There's my stutter. Zoning committee meeting this year. And I couldn't find many examples where councillors actually rejected one of these projects outright. The same is true when we look at the Committee of Adjustment, which handles smaller changes to planning rules. These minor variances get granted again and again. It's easy to see why. Council is bound to comply with its own planning rules, the policies that are written down in the official plan. When a report from city staff says that a project follows these rules, and they generally do, councillors tend to follow their lead. If they don't, they risk having their decisions shot down by the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is a provincial body that handles appeals. Besides, council has set housing as one of its top priorities, but I have seen amendments, generally small tweaks to projects, shifting a setback, saving a few trees, getting community benefits deals, things like that. So when we're thinking about how the media can affect these projects, keep in mind that sometimes you have to limit your horizons and kind of aim for those smaller changes. Moving forward. So there's something else that's about to change that I think is relevant to this, which is the new zoning bylaw that's coming into effect this year. It will be much closer to the official plan, much more permissive and open to development. So some examples: more density, more commercial development allowed along streets like Woodruff, and the right to build all sorts of things that were previously limited, like shelters and rooming houses, right across the city. So a lot of projects that would have come to planning committee simply won't anymore, and there'll be fewer chances to weigh in. The projects will just be allowed as of right. Going to the next slide, here's some examples of how it will affect your neighborhood, of course. We see a shift where things are getting a little bit darker on the right than in the beginning, in the middle. That's a shift from one zone to another that will allow things, but also up to 12 units on a lot of lots. And those colored areas around the edges where it's changing to red, those are hubs and major corridors that allow tall towers in commercial areas. So to reiterate what I said before, we'll go to the next slide. It's best to get the word out early, because if there's something you want to influence, you might not have the chance to do it at planning committee. So if you think that the media can put some pressure onto a developer or on city staff, I think it's even more important to come to us early, before a project is fully worked out and ready for construction. So yeah, those were my thoughts. Thanks.
Do we have any questions?
There's so many developers that are, and during scrutiny, their financing. And because Canada is on the map now and on the radar for a lot of anti-money laundering time. And with developers, you don't know where that money's coming from. So have you ever considered a story about that?
I have done stories like that in the past, particularly back in Regina, actually on the subject of that capital point poll that I was talking. Generally, when we look into a project, we'll pull the land title and we'll look at the finances that show up on the land title. Say liens, like how heavily indebted this project be? Is it paying the subcontractors that are working on it? Because they might have builders' liens on the project, and that can sometimes lead to us asking questions about whether this project is, financially feasible. I think that for that capital point story, that led to some questions about how that particular company that was leading Capital Point was financed. And I think it was connected to some mortgage scandals. So sometimes as we start to look into a project and pull some of those documents, it does lead down some interesting financial.
Yeah, because I find it odd that a builder that has built homes in West Grove has funds to build a 24-story house.
Yeah, so that is absolutely something that we'll look into. And if you find something like that, by pulling land titles, you can bring that to us and we might want to. Yes.
Yeah, I worked in a regulatory environment and we approved projects, but before we approved them, we made sure that they were viable, that they had the financing behind them. And we've had several instances where projects get approved and never built, or they get changed. They become something else than what was approved. And I'm wondering why, there isn't more concern about how these projects are financed. Remember, we've got a project just up the street here that we think the developer is just going to get the approval, then going to shop around and try and get people to back it after the fact. So we've got the glaring example at the Walmart there on Baseline, where this thing is sitting there and nothing is said about it. But obviously, it wasn't a solid project at some point. So how can we put pressure on the city to, make sure a project's really viable, that we're really approving a genuine project rather than somebody's big idea?
Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time when a project gets approved and the developer just sits on it for months or years. Like the best example that I can think of is that Trinity project on LeBreton Flats that was supposed to be the tallest building in the city, 65 stories. They've had approval for that for ages and haven't moved on it. I mean, that's just market conditions, right? And I don't think that's something that planning committee or council looks at. That's not really a criteria when they're deciding whether to approve a project. It's, does it meet the official plan? Does it comply with the provincial planning statement? Whether the developer actually has the finances to follow through with it, I've never heard that come up. I don't know whether there's even a statutory role for council to decide.
It's happened so many times here before. We have 4 towers that have been approved for Bayshore, and none of them have been built. There was two plus two, and they just sit there and you ask, and they say, well, you know, things have changed, and you know, it's difficult to get supply chain workers, everything. But it is a financial decision.
Exactly.
And they just, you know, the city doesn't know. Look at, like, they have to go to banks. And banks usually go with something that they're going to get money back to. So interest rates play a role. When interest rates go up, that makes it harder as well. Not giving them excuses, but that's what they say. And but you're right that sometimes they just sit on it. I'm still waiting for that project on the corner of Carling and Woodruff.
That's right.
Again, that was supposed to be done. It was just before I got here. It was already been talked. They talked to the community and got a lot of things worked out. Supposed to have a little pop, you know, but nothing's happened.
It's been sold
Yeah.
or is still up for sale again.
The point is, it wastes city staff time, it wastes the community's time. People get worked up and invest a lot of time and effort into looking at these projects and making comments, and they're not really solid. They never were solid in the beginning. So I'm sure there's, you know, putting some sort of stipulation about financing, at least have some sort of commitment as to how this project's actually going to be financed before you approve it. Would make some sense to me. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time.
It's certainly something for us to look at too. I mean, we've noticed that project at Baseline, at a Baseline as well, that has been sitting there for months. And I think it's a good way to explore how the market has changed and the way that these decisions are being made.
And the other thing is the way the approvals are sort of open-ended. They get approval and it's kind of like forever. Like, that's so ridiculous. You know, if you don't build it by this time, forget it. You got to come back and go back to square one. Why is it so open-ended? Anyways, there you are.
I think a real prime example, it's not financed, but is the Lincoln Field secondary plan in RioCan. Like, the whole plan was built around that piece of land. And we invested a lot of community time, and people actually were kind of happy with what was being proposed there. And been invest in residential development, and I just.
They changed their business model.
Yeah.
Well, they went back to their original business model, which is shopping malls. And they want to go back to it. So this is nationwide, but unfortunately, Lincoln Field gets pulled into it. I mean, they had already started on Westgate, and so they got started on that, but the only thing they did at Lincoln Field is build a grocery store and a pharmacy, and no housing. And we haven't given up. And I've talked to our planning staff, our new general manager, and say, we can't give approvals for a shopping mall. We need housing. So I think we hold the cards on that in terms of, we'll approve housing. That's what we're going to do. And are you going to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal when you're not building housing? You just want to build shops? No. So I think that's one instant where we have some say.
What about the people here? Would we rather see a shopping center there, or would we rather see a 45-story building?
I prefer the metro.
I think we need a mix, and that was the plan. They were going to have commercial on the front.
Well, I think to tie it back to kind of the work you do about trends, like, so we're new homeowners and we moved into the neighborhood wanting to see kind of what the plans had been of this mixed use of residential and commercial, and being capable to live in an area where you don't need a car to access your basic services. And so to hear that some of these plans of, you would have a new pharmacy or a few grocery store options, And as well, like allowing people from different walks of life, you know, not everyone needs a house, and people want to live in an apartment and be able to have friends who have different lifestyles to live in the same area. Like that was a big selling factor. So maybe the trend of people buying or moving in areas based on expectations that are never fulfilled is something we can talk more about, that could be a viable type of support. Yeah, just focusing on the line of work you were in.
Right. But of course, we hear this again and again in council.
Yeah.
There's nothing that the city can do to force a development.
You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to even maintain, right? We say that at Heritage Committee all the time, where properties are.
And let them
decay,
disintegrate. Yeah.
and there's nothing the city can do to force it to actually maintain.
But,
I have a question. So when they initially were going to build the village, it was the Steve Rogers that was our city councillor, Mark Taylor was our councillor, and it was supposed to go down under well, there was different options, but the determination was it was going to Richmond, and then it was going to go down through the bus transit right away. And then they discovered, oh gosh, gee, there's a Pinecrest Creek buried there, and it's a 100-year floodplain. So everything got shifted east. And I mean, we support the LRT, like it's a good thing for our neighborhood. We'll all reap the benefits and rewards of it. And that's why I like the community, because it is so walkable. And at that time, the secondary plans were in neighborhoods. But now when I see the new secondary plan, they want to put, well, they still have to get approval, but it's on NCC property, is to put high rises. And how can you put a high rise in a 100-year floodplain?
And it's very small neighborhood. Many was better about it, but it's not the right spot for high rise on it.
Oh, no.
And that's precisely the area that. I was developing.
Well, it's
Concentrated.
whether it will happen in my lifetime, I don't know, but you know.
generally speaking, they don't build in the hundred.
But that's where the LRT was supposed to go, and that's where the developers, like that here it's going now, that you can put them in where the access ramps are, is that's where they want to put two buildings that are 40 stories high. In the future,
Right.
might not happen.
Very likely won't anytime soon, because as.
This was on the west side of the weekend.
Yes, on the west side of the Neat, on
The
north
north and
and south of Carling. And that's where the Pinecrest Creek is buried underneath.
Right.
And then we have a beautiful crowd out there, which we tried to save. And we're still trying to save, but we actually did get media attention for that. But they still got the trees down. But, you know, so many people would come and take photos in the springtime of those blossoms.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about. You tie it to something that people recognize to and it's much easier to do.
Do we have any questions from the online folk? Guess not.
Thanks so much, Roger.
Well, thank you for coming. I think we all found that really interesting and informative. And we got some key words to use when we're describing some of the challenges we face in our neighborhood that might get us some attention, but certainly that I'm sure our counselors are used to hearing. So that was very helpful.
Well, keep the lines of communication open. Right?
Turn it over to Sue now for to chair the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. You're welcome to stay, but I'm sure you have other things to do too.
Actually, I need tribute.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Closer to the camera,
Is that close enough?
I guess.
Okay, I can go like that.
Yeah, because there's a spot on the floor that we marked with tape.
Okay, I'm right on the spot, okay?
Good.
Good, okay. Good job. Hey, I'm Sue Milburn-Hoppert. I'm the president of the Woodpark Community Association, have been for, I guess, 3 years going on. Well, should I be elected by my board, I'll stay on for another year as president. Anyhow, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and we
started off with a great discussion. The next thing on our agenda is to invite our councillor, Lisa Kavanaugh, to come and say some remarks. And she's come, I think, to just about every annual general meeting we have. She probably tries to get to most of the community associations, and we're really pleased that she could fit us into her schedule, and I'll let her carry on with her remarks.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's hard to follow Arthur. That was very entertaining. And of course, as counselors, we also, work to get his attention on good stuff. But whatever they come to us for, we'll respond. And so it's always interesting, and often things come from the community, and which is fair game. No, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, taking your time to be part of your community. I'm always impressed with when people make that time, so that's great. So I'm just going to give a few updates on items in this area, and I'll touch on development files and stage 2 LRT construction, of course, and parks, communities, infrastructure updates. So for development, we have to acknowledge that the neighborhoods across Bay Ward, including Woodpark, are definitely seeing the impact of intensification. And this is only likely to grow with the opening of the stage 2 LRT West Extension, because we have 7 stations just in this ward alone. Earlier this year, Council approved a comprehensive zoning bylaw, and I have worked with community members on this to update previous zoning provisions from 2008 in order to support the growth of the city, which is projected to be 1.7 million by 2051. And to align with updated provincial legislation aimed at accelerating housing development with more units permitted as of right where there used to be just single lots. And this is pressure this is an order basically from both the province and the federal government.
If you could speak just a little,
Oh,
we don't have.
okay. All right. So we get a lot of questions about the zoning bylaw, and we're actually putting something together so people can have more specific information on what's happening with the new zoning bylaws. There's a virtual meeting on Thursday, May 21st, where I've asked city staff to come, and you can register through my office, and there is a link for that. We'll have it in our newsletter, of course. By the way, I'm here with Kira Cronin, who's with my office and works on all the development files. So she's here as well. The files in Woodpark, I think I know you know them. The 24-story residential tower with a four-story podium at Carling and Edgeworth, which is 508 Edgeworth Avenue. 262 residential units and 123 parking spots with an underground parking. So the zoning bylaw amendment for this development will likely come to Planning and Housing Committee on June 3rd or June 17th. And my office has held a community session on it before, and back in March. The recording is available on my website, so that information is still out there. We also share information on my newsletter. We'll find when the date's finalized, you'll know about it through my newsletter, and I'll certainly reach out to the executive, of course, as well, so that you get it. And I also received questions about committee of adjustment applications. There's one for 177 Compton, and that hearing takes place on Tuesday, May 19th. And residents can present as a delegation. Just need to contact the committee coordinator. In terms of staying informed on upcoming development projects, just this past week, the city's planning and housing department introduced development growth ward maps, and we got a little sample here of the projects that are going on. So Kira brought some of these with us, so you can see, showing the overview of construction-ready developments in the Bay Ward, as well as developments currently in the planning pipeline. So Kira can help you on that, and we do have some of those maps available, and they're online. I recognize that development brings with it demands on a neighborhood's infrastructure. It's important to note that no development is approved without a thorough examination of infrastructure capacity by city engineers and to ensure that the services remain stable, i.e. the underground stuff, that is the waterworks and sewer, etc., and drainage. Woodpark community has also been identified in the upcoming transportation master plan for active transportation upgrades, including a sidewalk on Edgeworth, which has been promoted because of the potential development to be at the top of the list. As well, a sidewalk on Lawn between Edgeworth and Ancaster, and a sidewalk on Woodland between Byron and Carling is proposed, but that's further down the line. So I'm working on these projects to get them prioritized, especially along with the development in the community. Park space. I've received some questions from the community about plans for McEwen Park, which is directly across the street on the other side of Richmond. Right now it was basically a work area during the LRT construction, and it will be put back to being a park. So the way it goes is that it will be fully restored, and they are actually working on it. We've got updates that it should be ready this summer. Now it will be back to what it was before. It's, I've been asked, are they going to do anything new? Not at this point. The KEV contract is bring it back to what it was before. So it will be back to a green park. However, one thing that we did hear is there's going to be a lot of trees. You remember the ratio of 2 to 1 for the trees? This is a prime spot to put trees. So they're looking at that. So you could have a more tree heavy park, which would be quite nice. So that is in the plans, and we'll be seeing that probably in the coming weeks when they get planting. So once the park is back into public use, we can determine if there's any new amenities that we need to install to serve the community. And that could be a lot of things. And that's something I can work with the community on. That would require what we call the cash in lieu, CIL for short, where there's a fund in each ward based on money that came from developers that's put into a fund that can be used for things like parks. And an example of that is I'm funding a splash pad at Bayshore, which has no pool, beyond a private rec center. So we're going to have a splash pad because there's 2 schools there. There's a lot of kids. And that's something that I'm using cash in lieu funds for. So we've also used it for smaller things like gazebos or other things. So, but that's a discussion we can have with the community so that we get it right of what fits for this area. So next door in Woodruff Park, I've been working on this for many years of getting a community building, and through my cash in lieu fund, I've already paid for architectural drawings and geotech studies. So it's a project that just needs to be built, just needs the funds to be built, but it's been promised for 2027.
This is Carlingwood.
This is called Woodruff Park in Carlingwood, yeah. So that will be serviceable for your community as well as Woodruff North. And that would mean a meeting room, similar to what McKellar Park has, they're across the city. We desperately need those. We've got a building that was built in the early 1960s, cement block building. We need a usable space for this area. So that's what we're looking for, and that's being funded in 2027. I have another one for Frank Ryan, same story. Another area that's going to experience growth. And I'm saying, get rid of the field house, put in a community building. That will be for 2028. So, that's been earmarked. So stage 2, general timeline. They're talking about Q3 2027. I know it keeps changing, but I like 2027 because I can say next year. So, yeah, it's coming. The Richmond Road Complete Street project will most likely run into 2028, which really made me feel depressed, to be honest. I thought it would be finished at the same time. But the end date will depend on the progress made this year. It is moving forward. A good chunk of the western part is done. They're going to continue on that. Right now, of course, the pain in the neck is Byron, the work that's being done there. But that's infrastructure work. Keep in mind that everything they're doing underground is upgrading. When you think of a city like Calgary that just had burst pipes and problems from aging infrastructure, we're fixing that now. It's very unglamorous, but we're getting it done. It's a pain in the neck because it's detours and closed roads, etc. But we're going to have updated infrastructure for our water system, and that is really good news. And for our utilities too, because they're doing it while they're at it. So we're getting constant updates on that. So let's see. Restoration of drainage and restoration plans for lawn at Edgeworth. We've had this question. The work is planned to be completed this year. The drainage system on Edgeworth lawn has been flushed and is performing better now. More investigations around the elevation of the catch basins and the state of the pipes are still required, so landscaping can't be done until that work is finished. Kev has put on their prior list and is still getting it scheduled. Stage 2 has reached out to Kev's landscaping superintendent and is going to take a look at it this week to see if there's anything that can be done in the meantime. This issue remains top of mind for the Stage 2 team. It's been made very clear it's important. My office has also reached out to city staff who are coordinating with Stage 2 about temporary parking signs to put in place once the resodding is completed. Once construction is complete, Kev will return the street signs to their original placement. I received an update this morning about the north sidewalk on Carling, and Sue, you got the news that will be open this summer, so it'll be July. So that's the good news. I hate to say bad news, but they're going to close the sidewalk on the south side. Yeah. But this is all work that has to be done, but at least the one that's closer to you, the one that's closer to the upcoming station is going to be open. I walked to my dentist who's right on Edgeworth, and I've had to walk all the way around. So I'm looking forward to having a straight line to walk down. That'd be great. I want to take a moment to thank Tom Marcantonio and other Woodpark residents for their work to ensure the mother elm tree will be commemorated. We're going to have a plaque at the new Orchard Station, and a slice of the tree, called a cookie, will be made into a table for shared community use at the Carlingwood Library. That's very nice, and we're looking forward to seeing it. Finally, I'm also aware that this neighborhood has concerns about parking pressures associated with infill development. This is happening across the city, and the upcoming opening of Sherbourne and New Orchard Station. And my office and traffic services and parking enforcement are committed to work with you to ensure the problems are addressed. And yes, they can do it as a community. I know the tendency is to do it street by street, but we can talk about strategies so that you're not banning parking on one street so it flips over to another. Let's have something that meets everybody's needs, and we can work on that. So those are some of the topics. I've got other information. Just in general, other things that I work on in my spare time. I'm chair of Ottawa Community Housing, which is one of the forefront of affordable housing builders, and is building housing across the city, which is very exciting because we desperately need nonprofit affordable housing, and it's getting built. So that's something that I feel very excited and very proud of, because it takes away the pressures that we are seeing, because there's just not enough affordable housing. It's great when families can buy a house. It's getting harder and harder. And that shouldn't be. That should be that, okay, you get to a stage, you've saved up, you're ready, but then the market is crazy. But if we need to take it off the pressure by having more affordable homes out there for everyone.
So I think Tracy will take a few more questions. I know we sent her some questions and she's answered them, but maybe I was maybe drifted off just as you started to talk about the temporary street signs. And can you just tell me again what that was?
Okay. Hold on. Okay. According about temporary parking signs that put in place once the resodding is completed.
So that was on Lawn and Edgeworth? was
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've been gone for 2 years and they're part of the problem about the lack of grass.
Yeah.
So,
Understood.
okay, any other questions for our counselor? Go ahead.
They closed the south side of Carlin sidewalk. How does the access to Lincoln Field Station change?
That's a good question. We'll ask them to put that all in there because one of the things I raised was my first thought was this building, Woodruff High School students. If you're closing the south side, that's how they get off the bus and walk over. So we need that there's pedestrian routes that are for the south side, which is right here. This is one of the major points. So I will have more information once we get those notices ready, or not us, but stage 2. But I made it clear that we've got to have clear instructions of what people are supposed to do. And of course, we've been telling people not to take the north side for all this time, blocked it off. It'll be very similar, but they have to have alternatives.
Larry?
Or maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of controversy about the LRT is about the curves, and I'm wondering about the curve in Ambleside. Is that curve gonna cause problems? Because that's what's grinding away at the axles and everything, and it seems like they cheaped out in terms of trying to make the curves too tight. Are we gonna have the same problem there?
I know that question has been raised for many years. I asked that question to Michael Morgan back when he was the project manager. And they have assured me that they've been testing it and they're, working through it. I'm not an engineer, but I did ask these questions too.
Okay.
It's right outside of 1190, the condo building on your corner. And certainly they wondered themselves and they were concerned about noise level. But we've heard from, experts on noise as well, because they thought it would make a squeal noise or something like that. They came back and said that it should not be a problem. But these are questions I've been asking for years when we were doing the construction part. So those are the answers I got.
Well, it looks like from what I've been reading, the long-term solution is to redo some of those curves that there's no
I
technology.
know the
that's gonna
Herdman
fix
curve
it.
is the most famous one.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Okay,
Steve?
anyways.
Yeah, speaking of curves, I remember when first taking the LRT when it first opened, that part east of the University of Ottawa was like a carnival ride. You're going like this. It's a lot of curves in that area. I just want to talk a bit about parking. I'm heartened to hear that there's possibly a community approach to Woodpark parking instead of the street by street, excruciatingly frustrating exercise that potentially exists, especially in light I was not happy to hear about a developer in the area advertising our streets as free parking. Where do they get that idea from? How can we manage that? Because it's not free parking.
Absolutely not. It's not. And that was wrong for them to do that. We make it clear that, no, that's not the case, especially for larger projects. But these smaller projects tend to do their own thing. And no, we're pushing back on that. They should make it very clear to anybody who goes into a building that does not have a parking spot that they were designated and on their property, that they're taking a huge risk. And it's going to be the case over and over again, because they are taking a huge risk. You cannot take a place that doesn't have parking and expect to just park on the street. It won't work. Sooner or later, it's gonna catch up with you. So absolutely.
So in the meantime, can the developer, the person that's representing the property be fined or something? Have some bylaw officer visit him and how he's running his development? I don't know.
I don't think there's a rule about
Representing.
misrepresenting street parking. I know that if you change the parking, you have to understand that you can only change parking you have to change parking for everyone. So if you take away, ban parking, that means no one can park, including your friend who's visiting you from out of town for a couple hours, So we have to have a balance, and it's going to wear down. I mean, the whole point is that the city took away parking minimums because that's a big expense for building. Parking is real estate. Let's be honest. It's absolute real estate, and it's expensive real estate. So if they build it into the development, it costs them because it's space. But if they don't, people aren't going to be interested in moving there if they have a car. So where are they going to go? So they're going to live without a car. And that's the whole point of being near a transit station. So they're hoping that people will not have a car.
We'll be back to you soon about the parking. We've got a plan. I'm ready to send it to you, and I think that Street of Anthony is gonna eat the first cut. Like, that's a kind of an urgent situation now, but one of the things we're gonna need is some enforcement associated with that. One more question at the back, and then we're gonna have to move on to the rest of our meeting.
It's just questioning the parking minimums really, or the lack thereof. To me, there's no real restrictions on the height that developers can build to now, so to say that
Well,
it's
there is.
real estate,
Yeah, there are restrictions in the zoning.
to me, they're not logical restrictions, let's say. I mean, to me, I'm in a 2-story, I'm gonna have a 40-story building blocking up the sun for me, as soon as it's done across, Woodruff, or across Mission there. So, to me, that argument doesn't necessarily hold water, and I think you can see that happening everywhere, the parking is just gonna get worse and worse and worse, and we're facing a situation where it's just gonna be either a mess every day, or residents are gonna have to buy permits if they wanna park right in front of their houses. So to me, neither of those are really palatable.
Back to, if they want to move in to a place that does not have parking, they are taking a huge risk. And so each person will, when they move in, will have to make that decision. But the concept is to live without a car. And the thing about the parking minimums is that's what developers are allowed to do. But in reality, if they want to look at what can they rent, or what can they will find out that maybe people don't want to live in their place because they don't have so they will lose out. But that's a decision they made. And frankly, they'll have to charge more if they have parking included, because that's a big piece of the property.
The decision that the developer and the possible owner are making impacts me, and it's not my decision. So that's part of it.
Isn't the city incentivizing these builders to not have spaces?
They're saying that there's no parking minimums because they want more units. They want to see more places for people to live.
Why does the city allow it?
Because it's because they want to see more units. I talked about how many units we need. Well, that's your opinion that they could never get around without a car. There are people that live without cars.
A lot of people that need a car and children.
I know that argument.
Yeah.
It's going to be a transit system right at their doorstep. We're going to have stage 2 LRT opened.
And it's gonna work this time?
We hope so. Yes.
It's working right now.
Yeah.
Well, look at D&D, they don't have parking for the employees that,
Yep.
So that's a big problem, like, that's been in the news, so.
Yep.
But I know that it's just, if you look at the rents, and that they're charging for the units, they're not affordable units. And, so and I don't see bike storage, and so that's when I see the sixplexes or the eightplexes, you know, and where the bin's going and where the bike's flying if there's no cars.
I think we're gonna be in this transition between, we don't have a functional LRT or a public transit system. And we have more infill, and that is gonna be really challenging. Anyhow,
Teresa, you said that the LRT would be open, well, not,
2027.
27. So does that mean that the parkette will be reinstated by that time?
Which parkette?
Lawn Avenue parkette.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
once they're able to get all the machinery out, they no longer need it. There's no work.
there.
Yeah, when the work is done, then they can start landscaping. Landscaping is the last stage, the last step.
And
Yeah.
all the machines are gone.
Yeah.
Nothing there.
okay, with that, thank you very much for coming and,
Got them at the back. I think that.
and if, I gotta put the agenda up.
No. Sorry. I don't have it available easily.
So, we need to start by approving the agenda, and which is essentially, we're halfway through it. We're now moving into the administrative matters, and, we're gonna talk about the agenda, we're gonna approve the minutes, and then I'm gonna do a year review, and then we are going to, do a motion, and the copies of the motion are here. It's essentially, to, add a new executive position to our board. And so if people want to look at that, we will be voting on that, and then we will have the election of the board. So I assume everyone's okay with that. Can I have someone to,
To move that we approve the agenda?
okay, great. All in favor? Assume everyone's okay? Good. Minutes from the previous meeting. We had a meeting this time last year on a night when Ottawa was still in the hockey playoffs, and attendance was less than this. We also had a thunderstorm. Anyhow, we have the minutes of the meeting. I don't know if anyone's had a look at them. I'm just going to assume that everyone is okay with those minutes. Can we have someone to
I will move
Move
to
it.
approve the
Someone to
last
second it.
AGM meeting minutes.
Anyone opposed to approving the minutes? No. Okay, moving on. Great. So let's get into our year in review. And this is where I'm going to talk just a little bit about what the Woodpark Community Association did over the course of the last year. So that's the association, its members, and the board, who was really the big drivers for many things. But we also had some volunteers help us on things too. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about two issues that will be very important coming forward. One of them is parking, and we've already started to talk about that. So just to remind folks of what is the purpose of a community association. This is essentially what is in our bylaws, our original incorporation documents. It's in our strategic plan. This is our mission, and essentially to develop and foster community spirit, to enhance, protect and enhance the quality of life for the community, to educate on civic matters, keep residents informed of actions or proposed actions that could affect the community. And I think we've seen quite a bit on that. And then to cooperate with other community associations or other organizations for mutual benefit. So that's why we exist. So it's to have fun and to do some serious stuff. So that's kind of where things are at. Am I in your way here? You okay? So let's talk about the fun stuff first. So we did quite a number of events last year. We started off with the garage sale in June, and we're going to have another one last day of May, I think.
May 30th.
May 30th. We repainted the mural last June as well on a beautiful sunny day, and had lots of kids out, and that was a really fun activity. We had a movie night in the park. First time in many years that it actually rained on the day, and we had to postpone it to a Sunday night where attendance wasn't quite so good because kids need to get to bed for school the next day, but we still had some kids out there. We had a park cleanup. Then we did our annual community giving tree project.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We had our annual community tree giving project where we, members in the community and some of our surrounding community associations provide gifts for seniors in long-term care residents and some of the seniors in need at the Old Forge. And then just most recently, we had a Spring Fest on the first day of May that Jody had pulled together with lots of help from folks. And that's a picture actually of the Spring Fest where we had bubbles and we had bike repair, we had lots of treats, and we had a balloon artist and face makeup, face painting and all that. So that was a fun event. So we do these things with a lot of help from our sponsors. And this year, people really, the local businesses really stepped up, and we raised between our sponsors. So these tends to be kind of businesses and some individual residents. Raised over $3,000 or almost $3,000, which is like huge. That's about the budget that we spend. So that was a huge year this year. So lots of support from our sponsors. So that's the fun part. Now we're going to get to the more serious part, and hopefully not too serious, and hopefully you don't fall asleep. This time last year, as I mentioned, during a rainstorm and a hockey playoff, we had our annual general meeting, and we elected 10 board members. And they're great board members. We had a really great year. Unfortunately, a few are moving out of the neighborhood. 2 are moving out of the neighborhood. 1 already did move out of the neighborhood, and a couple of other are stepping down. So tonight, later on, we're going to elect 6 board members, but we desperately need a few more people to help out. So give it some thought as I'm talking about whether you could have your name. You can put your name forward tonight. We can elect you, or you can think about it and we can elect you at any point during the year. But it would be really great to start this this next year of the community association with a full slate of 10 to 12 board members, because it just divides up the work, and also the exchanges of ideas are much richer when you have a few more people bringing in their perspectives. We got right to work and we started on our priorities and our strategic plan, and we post that every year for people to comment on it. We post it on our website. So if you want to find what the priorities are, you can go to our website and find that. It's under the other section. We met in September with the councillor to talk about various issues, and we actually had a very good meeting that time. I sent a whole list of issues. I think we talked to the community for their perspectives on it, and it was a very good meeting. The council was well prepared because we were clear about what we wanted. And one of the big things we got out of that meeting was a commitment to get some help on parking and to have somebody from the staff can help guide us along the way. The council talked a little bit more about that tonight, and came out of that meeting the sense that we would have to take a street by street approach. Sounds like maybe there'll be a more community approach, which is great. So we met with her. At that time, the new zoning bylaws were coming through, and we raised a number of issues with the councillor and with the mayor about our concerns about the zoning bylaws. Many of them related to the infrastructure necessary to support the increase in population there. We were successful. The actual bylaw, when it was passed, it was a very technical exercise on a kind of a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. We were successful in changing one of the areas from a higher zoning. This is the part on Compton between, I think it's Anthony and Byron, and changing that to a little less dense to make it just more consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. It wasn't really clear why it was like that. So we had one win there, and we were surprised we actually got that win. I met with the federal MP, Anita Vanderben, in October to talk about the use of the NCC land that is between Carling and Lawn Avenue, where the community garden is. And then there's this kind of wasted space that's just invasive species and not much else there. What we might do about that, start a conversation, wanted to kind of get a sense about what the NCC was thinking about there. They refused to meet with us until actually the city hands back that land to the NCC, which I think is really unfortunate because we know that if we're going to put a few benches in there, or we're going to do something like that, that will be capital expenditures and they'll need to budget for those things. Anyhow, stay tuned on that. We had an open mic session in January to hear community concerns. We also in January sought input on the parking restrictions and got some input there. We had a community meeting in February about the development, the big 24-story development at 500 and 508 Edgeworth. I don't know if that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't pushed for it. The council organized it and made that happen, but they already went through some of the stage of the regulatory process before they had a community meeting, which I found was very disappointing. And actually, when we had the meeting, the developer didn't even show up. It was just the consultants. But we got some information, and there is a regulatory process that will come forward in June, where they will change the zoning there to allow that building. And I expect it will probably be approved, but hopefully we will have some input and some ongoing dialogue with the developer, and we'll have some input on things like transportation and the construction. So our community, Edgeworth's a really important connection into our neighborhood. Do you want to ask?
I know why you think it's gonna be approved.
Why what?
Why, coming out of the meeting, we think it's gonna be.
Why do I think it's going to be approved?
24 stories when it's sold for 12 stories.
Because the Lincoln Field secondary plan allowed a 24-story building to be put there. That was in the Lincoln Field secondary plan.
That required also 8-story building.
On
For that to be true.
So on Edgeworth, on the west side, they're allowing from, I think, 30-story 24 all the way down to lawn of 8 or 9, something like that, sort of a decrease, I guess, visually for apartments.
I did read some of the material that the consultants put out, and it was very misleading. I think it was designed to confuse people a lot.
The consultants for the 500
Yes,
Edgeworth?
for the actually 500 508 Edgeworth. Because there is a requirement in the bylaw that says there has to be a certain angle between the top of the building and the top of the next building on the other side of the street. And their argument was that every building on the other side of the street was 8 stories. Therefore, they should be justified to build a 24-story building on the other side of the street, at an offset back from the road. So right now, all those houses over there are 1-story buildings, right?
Or 2-story.
Or 2 stories. Some of them are 2 stories, right? And the infill that's going in there is 2 stories to 3 stories as well.
Absolutely right. They have ignored their own advice on the linear plane, which seems to be an optional issue. We went before, we spent a lot of effort on the Lincoln Field secondary plan to say no, that this shouldn't happen, and we lost. So I don't think, like, we lost that. That was the place for that argument. We can try that argument again, but it's already in the Lincoln Field secondary plan. So I think it'll be a done deal, but we'll see. And we will write a letter of objection of some. So
I, when the fellow from CBC was here, that it'd be worth getting a really good story for the neighborhood and see if we could, that they could use this, because I mean, there's so many people, there's people that, you know, just with small children that just live across the street, they just, you know, are so excited, they moved here from out west and they bought their house and they have 3 kids, and then this is going to be on the other side. I mean, it's twice plus 2 floors, the size of the one at the corner. You know, that one is 11, and then it's going to go to 24.
Very aware of what's going to happen, and if
we could do that,
right, we'll need some people to help do it, because I spent a lot of time on the Lincoln Field secondary plan. I've got some input from folks, but if we're going to do something like that, we'll need some people that live nearby to put their hand up and say, I'll write a letter, I'll contact the, again, if people want to do that, let me know and we can organize it. But that's a bit of a bit of the concern of, I think we don't always hear from folks and people are upset about things, but you have to let us know so that we can help organize and bring a collective voice. Anyhow, we'll see what happens on that, but I think the big fight was the Lincoln Field secondary plan and we.
This way, knowledge, like that was back in the fall when they did zoning.
No, the Lincoln Field secondary plan was, I would say it was in 2024, in November. I went before the planning and housing committee, when they discussed it and approved it. I think maybe it was early 2025 that the council approved it, but that was about the time frame.
The plan is, what it said was well thought out, or what it is, I don't want any buildings along that side of the street, to be honest with you, but they're like 8 to 12 stories. It's within the character of the neighborhood. The 24 stories is the problem that I have.
But that's what the plan approved.
But at the linear plan, it does not.
I agree, and we made that argument, and
Okay.
it didn't go. It's optional.
Okay.
But anyhow, I want to carry on.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's all right. I understand your passion, and I was very frustrated during that process. But we need to hear from residents to know what we're going, what we need to work on. We had a good meeting with Kev and Stage 2 in April, and we've now developed a parking proposal, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So here's the financial summary. That was one of the items on our agenda, and it just shows you what our expenses were, what our total income was. We've come in the black and have a healthy budget in the bank, but if we do have any more events, they cost money, so we'll have to continue to do some fundraising to keep a bit of money there. Yes, we have a donation box here, and I'll get to it. We also have an email where you can do some e-transfer, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so that's kind of what we did last year. So now it's time to move on to the new zoning bylaws. And Jody, do you want to just give just a short description of this? And the councillor did mention that they're working on kind of a piece to describe it, but Jody will just kind of give you what you need to know in the short term.
Okay, so I mean, both our guest speaker and our counselor have already alluded to many of the changes that are happening in Woodpark as a result of the new zoning, which were brought into effect on March 11th. Now, it's important to know that there is a whole appeals period where people can lodge a complaint and sort of appeal decisions that were made. And during that time, both the previous bylaw and this new one are in effect. And if someone's trying to apply for development, they will be subject to the strictest of either the new or the old, which typically in our neighborhood would be the old one, which is why at some places, 177 Compton as an example, we're seeing them apply for minor variance on their setbacks and their building height, both of which will be fine under the new bylaw, but are not allowed under the old bylaw, which is still in effect. So it's very confusing. So I'm trying to explain it, but honestly, it's crazy confusing. It's difficult. So for Woodpark, we used to be in R2, and that was really meant for low density housing. So single family homes or semi-detached, 1 or 2 dwellings per lot maximum. With everything we've heard tonight, and I'm sure for many, many, many years in Ottawa, that is not the direction the city is taking. And we have been designated what's called a mid-density neighborhood. And it's because we're near transit. It's because we're in sort of the center of the town. It's because we're considered a walkable community. They are targeting communities like ours to increase density. And we have been now designated an N3 mid-density category. So what that means for most of Woodpark is you can have up to 3-story or 11 meters of building on a lot with up to, I think, what did I say? 10 dwellings, as many as 10 dwellings. So that's quite a bit more than what you would see in an R2 zoning bylaw. Some parts of Woodpark are actually zoned at a higher level of intensity, and that would be Edgeworth along the sort of the south and the north end of Edgeworth, as well as along Carling Avenue, just sort of behind it, where there's some what are called N4 and 5, which allow for, N4 allows for a 14.5-meter building, and 5 allows for a 30-meter building. And along Byron Avenue, which has also been designated as N4, which allows for the slightly taller buildings with more ability to put higher number of dwellings. As we've talked about, the minimum parking requirements have been dispensed with. So developers get to largely decide how much parking they want to include in their proposals. Now, I think on a big build, there's actually a maximum parking that you're allowed when you're right next to a transit station. There's a ratio they use because, again, as we heard earlier from our councillor, the city's one of their objectives is to try to get people to move away from using cars and using transit or other ways to get around Ottawa. If you want to see, I won't speak too much more. I guess a couple of things. If you want to see how your home is currently zoned under both the old or the new, there's something called Geo Ottawa. If you go on the City of Ottawa website, ottawa.ca/Geo Ottawa, it's a very good interactive map. You can literally just put your house address in and it will zoom right in and it'll tell you how you're zoned. So you would know that, or you can look up your across the street homes, etc. So that I found really helpful when we were exploring some of these changes over the last year to really understand what was happening around. The second thing, I think Teresa said, yes, they're putting together an information sheet, but I think she also said she's going to have an event where the city is going to be there to answer questions in May. Yeah. Anyway, so I would recommend people who are very interested in understanding how the new zoning is going to change the character of our neighborhood to go to those types of things. I have read the entire new zoning bylaw twice now as is part of my work with the association. And there are elements of it that I don't really understand, to be honest. I can't quite put it into my mind exactly what that looks like. So these types of information sessions can be really useful to ask the technical experts questions. But the long and the short of it, it's our neighborhood is changing. We're not going to be able to stop that. We're not going to be able to reverse it. But, you know, the community association is here to support the community and making sure that our voices are heard, specifically or most often with respect to how it's going to impact our infrastructure, as Sue said, you know, our kids walking to school. Like, we have all these things that we're going to have suddenly all these more people and more cars in our neighborhood, and we want to make sure that we're set up to manage that. So that's really where the association has focused a lot of its effort. And I'll stop there because most of everything's already been said.
Okay, last major item, and then we can go for some more questions, but we've talked a lot about parking and the issue of the fact that many of the new homes are not going to have parking available. So we're going to need to manage that in some way. The other thing I think that we're going to see is that people will come, they'll want to park in our neighborhood, hop on the LRT and go downtown. And I lived in Toronto. I did that myself. So we need to think about what kind of daytime parking regulations we have to prevent that. So we done quite a bit of work over the last couple of years. We've mapped out all of the parking regulations that exist in Woodpark right now. It's a complete hodgepodge, a complete mixed bag. I would call it a whack-a-mole approach. So we'd have a business on Carling being built, people parked on that street, we got rid of the parking. And so there's a whole mix all over the place. And then there's quite a few streets that actually have no signs, and they are the default parking regulation, which is you can't park more than 3 hours during the daytime, during Monday to Friday, and no more than 6 during the daytime on the weekends and holidays. But there's no sign, so people don't know that. And also, bylaw doesn't come and issue parking tickets unless somebody calls and says, we've got a problem. We have somebody that parks here all of the time, or somebody's blocking our laneway, or that kind of thing. So we sent out a piece in January asking for people to provide us with their thoughts on and the problems that they're seeing in their streets and what they would like to see. Got some really good input. We didn't get a lot of input, but the quality of the input we got was really, really good. We heard from people on Edgeworth, Wentworth, Hartley, Midway, Lawn, Ancaster, Compton, and Anthony. And I would say many of those streets other than Edgeworth don't have any parking regulation restrictions on them other than the default. So people are starting to think about this and what they would like. So the concerns we heard of parking on both sides of the street, and I think people probably see this all the time, particularly when there's construction vehicles and garbage truck can't get down, or the school bus has trouble getting down, and God forbid, a fire truck or an ambulance that can't get down. Outside of my street, I live on Wentworth, like there's two cars that always park across from each other. And so there's a very narrow way for people to pass through. Hopefully it's not garbage day when they do that. People are worried about the lack of signage. You only get signage if you're not the default. So if you have anything more stringent than the 3-hour restriction, you get a sign. People are worried about residents that have housing with insufficient parking and are parking anyhow. And now we've heard about the landlord that's actually saying you can park in streets, no problem in Woodpark. And then I've also heard about the concerns about the fact that, we used to be a cottage country and there were farms. There were farmhouses in our neighborhood. We're becoming this high density neighborhood now. We don't have curbs, we don't have sidewalks. That's why there's all these tire marks on some of the streets, because we're not a modern, we're going to live in a very modern urban environment, but we don't have that infrastructure in our streets. Anyhow, we've done some thinking, and quite a bit of thinking actually. The Infrastructure and Development Committee, I guess I should be closer here, sorry. And we want to go and take it to the city expert to see if this is viable. And then in the fall, we want to come back to everyone in the community and start talking about it and seeing whether people think this is a good idea or not. So to give you just a sneak preview of what we're thinking about is keep daytime parking to be allowed in most of the streets of Woodpark, but limit it to maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, so you're not getting those people that are coming in from the suburbs, parking and going downtown for the day. You'll get signs and you'll get some bylaw from that. Parking, when we allow it, we only allow it on one side of the street. So every street in Woodpark will have one side of the street where people can't park, and the other side where the parking is going to be allowed. And there will be some criteria that the city probably applies to that. One that's been suggested is maybe you don't have parking on the side where there are fire hydrants, and that might make some sense, but I'm sure the city will have some criteria there. I think that the other thing that we'll probably want is in some of the congested areas, just no parking whatsoever. And I think Anthony, close to Woodruff, is going to be one of those areas now, because it's a really important route to school. One of the ladies that wrote to me, she cannot back out of her driveway in the winter because there's parking behind her and there's so much snowbanks she can't get out. So we need to do something there. So anyhow, that's a sneak preview of what we're thinking about for parking. And think about it, talk to your neighbors, and we'll probably have a series of discussions in the fall. And I was a bit encouraged because when I first started to talk to the councillor about this, there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm. She's come around and I think is going to work with us and get the city expert to take perhaps a more community-wide approach. Because if we do a street-by-street approach, what happens is we'll put a parking restriction in one street and the whole problem just moves over to the next, and we don't want that. Anyhow, last slide is we need your help on a number of things. We are a very small group. going to be down to 6 people. He'll be in his 8th year in the board. I will be in my 6th year in the board. Jody's been on for a couple years. Valerie's just rejoined the board. We have 2 other Jennifers they're actually both out of the country tonight, that have done some time on the board as well. We need some more help. We only are going to be 6 people, and we can't do all of these things that people are asking for just by ourselves. And David and I have spent a lot of time over the last 6 years modernizing this organization, having a website, having an electronic, making a professional organization. It'd be a real shame at this time when we have such pressing issues to deal with not to have a community association. And if we don't get some more people, we will close it and we will give the screen that we just bought to some other good organization. So really, I would like people to think about whether they could come out and be a board member. We meet the 3rd Thursday of every month. We take summers off and we take December off. And we meet for 2 hours, and then we have some other small committee groups, but it would be great if some other people put their hand up. And it's a really great way to meet people and to get to know what's happening in the community. We do a lot of events. Volunteering at an event would be great. We need that from people too. And we need some thoughts on actually what events people would like to see, assuming we have enough people to organize that. And we'll actually be sending a poll out to our email this week asking, do people want the mural to be painted again? Or is there a better use of our funds for something else? So think about that and please respond to the poll that goes out. It'll be going out by email. When we ask for views on issues, think about letting us know about what you're thinking at it. Just a quick email, we come in, we read them all, we respond to some of them, or we group them and then kind of turn that into our action. And finally, as David has already mentioned, we need funds. We will continue to look for corporate or business sponsors, but a small donation tonight would be great, or you can send it us to e-transfer, because nobody carries cash, or not too many people carry cash anymore. You can e-transfer us at woodpark@woodpark.ca. So that's all I have to say. I think it's now time to move on to the motion. So the motion that I think has been handed out is whether essentially to have a new part of our bylaws that adds another executive position, and that being dealing with technology.
I made the motion because I was tired of being secretary. And so Sue wanted me to stay on the executive. So I've been responsible for all of the technology. What this does is just makes the technology director an officer. What you see on the motion is the complementary description of the role that is there for the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. This will just add the technical director in the same format. I move that we adopt it. Do we have a second?
Second from Stephanie. All in favor? Done. Great. And in some ways, we still would like to have a secretary, but a lot of the role that used to be done by a secretary is now done through technology, which is kind of a different kind of skill set. So that's what that's all about. Okay, now moving on to electing the board. And Stephanie, who's been on our board, is going to step down because she has 2 young kids and lots to do. And we're going to miss her terribly, but she's legitimate now to run the election of board members. So step on the X.
Okay, so how this works is we can nominate now up to 15. Yes, let's up to 15 directors. We have 6 who have put their names forward already. So Sue Milburn Hopwood, Jody Proctor, Jennifer Plank, who's not here with us tonight, David Levesque, Valerie Hexamer, and Jennifer Soloway, who's also not here with us tonight. 2 Jennifers are missing. So that's 6 individuals who have put forth their name. How it works is if you're on the board, there are 4 different committees. After the board is elected, which we will do tonight, at their first meeting, they will decide who is going to be the president, vice president, technical director, secretary, and treasurer. There, I got them all. So they will decide that at the first meeting. I think that's pretty much it. Now, the main thing I have to ask is, would anyone else here in this room tonight like to put their name forward to be on the board? Anyone? It's a lot of fun. If I didn't wake up at 6 a.m. every day and have to go to bed at 8 o'clock every night, past my bedtime actually, I would still do it. So anyone?
No takers?
Yes? What's your name?
Andrew Rivers.
Andrew Rivers. And do you live in Woodpark? Okay.
And he's joining the Wentworth Mafia. We had a lot of people from Ancaster, and we had Wentworth. We've always had this rivalry between Wentworth and Ancaster. So we're back. We cut strike again.
Anyone else? I see our young couple here. Did you put your name forth? Like, is that a hand up? Okay. What, sorry. Can I get your name, please? You'll write it down. And you're on Howland. Okay, perfect. Oh, no, anyone else? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Well, there's 2 members and 1 developer.
Does anyone from the Zoom want to join? Going once? Okay, I think we're gonna call it at 8 tonight. So yes, may I get someone to move the motion to?
I move that we elect the board as displayed.
Can I have someone to second? Okay, Jody, a second. Can we all vote? Do we all agree?
That's everybody.
Perfect. So we have now elected 8 members who are your board.
And the 2 directors, you'll get an email from me very shortly. I will need to get your emails.
Okay.
And then we'll start setting up your Woodpark accounts.
Thank you, Stephanie. We may call on you in future years if you join the board. That was a great ability to manage that. So we're now at the point for any further points. I know people have raised issues already, but is there anything else people want to talk about? Let the board, the new board, know about that's worrying them. Things you'd like to see us deal with.
I noticed, and I didn't ask Teresa this, but I noticed like on the Lincolnfield station, that there's graffiti at the top, like when you go shopping at Metro, you can, coming back, you can see this graffiti.
On the new station?
On the old station. And that's the first time I noticed it, and and then just in our neighborhood, and I thought, like, doesn't the city have a policy against graffiti and that it has to be removed or something like that? Is that an issue that's worth our consideration or within our scope, or is it something that we just contact bylaw?
I think we just contact bylaw.
I know the community garden experienced it. They're repairing it now. I think that's one of the things they do like to eliminate it quickly so that it doesn't kind of grow. Larry?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we reach out to the community garden and see if they can nominate somebody from the garden to be on the board.
So we currently have 3 members of the community garden on the Woodpark Community Association board. So I didn't speak about the garden at all, but there's kind of a new coordinating committee for the garden. They are doing fantastic things, and there's a much closer relationship. I'm on the coordinating committee, and Jennifer's on the coordinating committee, and Mar, who's just stepped down, is on the coordinating committee. So we've got a fantastic relationship, and it's just going great. We had them come to the meeting last year because I wanted them to raise their profile. Now they've got such a waiting list for plots that they don't really need to raise their profile, but they will have some events and come drop by. I must say, my plot last year was right near the path, and I really enjoyed it. People would all stop and talk to me and ask me what I was growing, and I really enjoyed that conversation. So It's a great place. Yes, go ahead.
I'm concerned about the eventual traffic flow or lack thereof with closing the fire and Woodruff. Was there ever a rationale for why that's happening?
So you will be able to get out at Ancaster. So you go along Byron, and then when you get to Ancaster, you can go out of the neighborhood and go east toward Westboro.
There's no way in.
No, and I guess you could, so no, there's no way in. So if you're coming along Richmond Road, you'll have to turn the corner and then go in at Anthony or Flower. Or,
Like me, that takes me out of my way kind of thing, and that, like, I'm just, was there a rationale as to why it's that?
so it was before my time, but both Valerie and Larry.
We did a survey, we mapped out the whole neighborhood, we looked at the rights and the lefts and the turns. And basically that was the solution because people didn't want that much traffic going in and out of Upper Byron.
No, actually, the community in the survey opposed closing Byron. The city forced that on it. It was partly because we complained about losing all that park space. And then they said, well, we're giving you that space at Byron and Woodruff. You know, that's, so you aren't losing park space. But yeah, they forced it on us. The community did a survey and nobody wanted that Byron closed. Nobody, the city forced that on them.
When did you reverse that?
I think it would be very difficult to reverse, but if you know, people want to put together an effort to do that, to sit down and talk more about it, I mean, that's completely within the purview. Everything that I'm seeing, and I wasn't involved at the time, is that they are sticking with the plans that were agreed to. But obviously, over time, there will need to be adjustments. Things won't work out as planned or whatever. I too am frustrated. My daughter lives on Richmond Road, and I do that same all of the time. But that's the way it is. But you know, it's worth a conversation. Anybody else? I think you were trying to say something before.
I was curious, why would what would the city's reason for that?
Well, Larry's suggesting that that was based on park space in the Byron linear path.
I think that there's a lot of concern with Avenue as well, and people making illegal left-hand turns onto Richmond from a lot of the streets. So they just decided, because at one point they were actually going to close Byron at the church too as well. The church opposed that.
Yeah.
So this was their solution, and there was an option that, you know, you could still exit out of Byron. And plus, they didn't want there's a lot of discussion about traffic coming through to drop off their family members or somebody at the New Orchard station instead of dropping, because there's no kiss and ride or anything like that. So they were just worried about the traffic in the neighborhood because of the Lincoln Field station. Not the Lincoln Field, so the New Orchard station.
I also believe that the Richmond and Woodruff intersection is a high accident intersection. So this reduces the traffic coming into that intersection.
I must say, I used to come up from the Parkway and I would turn into Byron there, and the number of times I nearly got hit by someone that was merging in from Richmond onto Woodruff. I always was very careful, but the number of times I nearly got hit. Pardon?
The bad design to have traffic that close together, unparalleled.
But that, they got rid of the yield way, which I think fixed that problem. That was, people would go through the yield way on Richmond Road.
Yes.
And not stop driving.
I just wanted to comment on it. I think it's, you know, I mean, it's nice to think that they want to reduce the number of vehicles on the roads and things like that. But I think it's kind of ironic that they wanted to build developments. It's fine because we have a walkable neighborhood and it'll be good for the merchants. so that's a good thing. But every day that, like, I commute to Gatineau and back and forth to work, and Island Park, north-south, all the north-south routes to get you in and out and over to the Gatineau side, to the backside, the Champlain Bridge is a parking lot every day. And I don't know how those people live on that street. And it's all the way to the Queensway.
I move that we conclude the
Any,
meeting.
any more questions for non-board members? Okay, thank you very much for everyone for coming tonight. We've had actually a really great group and a really great conversation. Thank you for the 2 new board members that have put up their hands, and don't worry, it's not scary. It's we're a nice group, and we even have a party from time to time, and you can bring your spouse to the party too. So anyhow, thanks for coming. David, you want to move to?
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor? Good. Thank you very much. And we'll be cleaning up, but if anyone wants to raise anything, we're still around here.